Welcome in to Stop the Takes. Dakota and Austin here live on YouTube. And on the eve of our 2025 season preview, we have breaking news. Micah Parsons, Cowboys star edge rusher, has been traded to the Green Bay Packers. It was announced like 3 hours ago that they were open to trade talks after basically not allowing that per Jerry Jones. And then within a few hours, a deal was done with the Green Bay Packers. Austin, what is your immediate reaction to this news?
Dude, I'll be honest. So, yeah, like you said, it pushed back our preview show, but that's fine. One of the biggest trades in recent memory. Um, Unbelievable, dude. I was shocked because we've been hearing these negotiations all off season. Micah and the Cowboys going back and forth. There's all those clips of him on the sidelines of preseason games looking pretty bummed out, let's be honest. He was even sleeping on one of the preseason games. But it always felt like they were going to get it done because this has been the Cowboys' MO, Dakota. Like they drag these things out. They did the same thing with Dak. They did the same thing with CD, but they always get it done eventually because Jerry just wants to be in the headlines. That's why he does this. He wants to be in the headlines, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out Michael was done with it and it was legit. And like you said, reported a couple hours ago that the trade talks are happening, and then boom, a trade happens. Again, did not expect this. Rumors were actually swirling about the Packers and Micah, I believe a couple days ago. But again, I just kind of brushed it off, man. You don't see elite players, especially at Micah Parsons' age, Dakota, that get traded in the NFL. You just don't see this. This is just not common. And it happened, man. 2 first-round picks going the Cowboys' way and Kenny Clark. Listen, dude, if you would have asked me what I thought they could get from Micah, I would have said more, dude. I would have said more. Going back to the Khalil Mack trade, and I even brought up to you before the show the Will Anderson trade in the draft. Man, I would have expected they could have got more out of Micah.
It is shocking. And I mean, I feel like it is an all-time fumble on Jerry Jones's part. You know, we're coming off of him kind of screwing up CD Lamb and Dak Prescott's contract talks. You know, this consistency of just delaying things, delaying them. And he got those deals done, but way more expensive than he could have had he just signed them initially. And I think this is where he ended up with Micah, is that, you know, these other deals got done from edge rushers, and you're now stuck in a position where you have to pay top dollar for him, who is probably worth it. Let's be honest. He is worth the money. And he ends up in this situation. And you know, we had all the news about, you know, he had a deal in, you know, a verbal agreement with Micah, and a lot of this then spiraled where it was, you know, which is actually part of the NFLPA, the bargaining agreement, that like you have to work with an agent when the player is represented. So you had all of that fiasco going on, and it sounds like that soured things, where Micah was pretty upset about how Jerry handled that, and pretty much just refused to talk to his agent after that. So it felt like the relationship had been damaged, and in an insane way, because he is your star face of the franchise, to be honest, even more than Dak and CD right now. He is the face of the franchise and one of the faces of the league.
I know.
And
man.
You give him up for Kenny Clark and 2 firsts.
And dude, I mean, we're talking about probably the second best pass rusher in the NFL. I mean, at least top 5 at the very least. And to trade him in his prime, dude, like this is a guy in his mid 20s. It was absolutely shocking. And like looking at it from a Packers perspective now, I mean, they're a dangerous team, Dakota. They're an absolute dangerous team. Adding Micah Parsons to this defense. Listen, the Packers all offseason to us, they weren't doing much. They were not doing much. They were one of the least active teams in the offseason, but they just pulled off the most important trade in the offseason. This is by far the most important trade this offseason, and completely changes my outlook on the Packers. I mean, we alluded to our preview show earlier that we're going to go live with right after this. I didn't have them making the playoffs. I didn't, because they're in a really hard division. This Micah trade completely changes that, man. I think they are a serious contender to win this division now and potentially win the NFC. I mean, this completely changes their defense. And dude, I told you as well, one other factor in this that I think people won't look at. I think part of this has to do with Matthew Golden, man. Matthew Golden has looked so good in camp. He has looked so good in camp. And we've said all offseason, Dakota, the one thing missing on this offense is an elite X wide receiver. If they believe they have that, then that means they think they're ready to contend. And if you're ready to contend, what do? You go spend 2 first-round picks and you trade for a guy like Micah Parsons, one of the best defensive players in the NFL.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, we had talked when we were doing our offseason grades and everything, it just felt like the Packers were one of the few teams in the NFL that didn't necessarily get better. They drafted Matthew Golden, and that was great. And, I liked Savion Williams as well. But they didn't make any moves in free agency that made an impact on the roster. And in a division that is one of the toughest in the NFL right now, they just didn't feel like they did anything to help stay to the pace with the Lions and the Bears and the Vikings. And this is how you do that. One of the biggest flaws that the Packers have had for the last few years has been pass rush. Yes. They drafted Rashawn Gary back in 2019, and he's gotten better. Rashawn Gary's gotten better, but he never really lived up to like an elite level player. And then they drafted Lucas Van Ness, and he's just kind of disappointed overall so far. And they had been kind of chasing a consistent guy for the last, really since Clay Matthews left, right? I mean, they signed Preston Smith, they signed Sedarius, who both had some pretty solid seasons while in Green Bay. But not a guy like this, like the Clay Matthews, but better face of the franchise level type of talent to add to that defense that can be a difference maker down in and down out.
And dude, when you add a guy like Micah Parsons, all of a sudden Rashawn Gary's stock goes up. Like, we're talking like, okay, Rashawn Gary has been good, but imagine adding Micah Parsons the other side. Now they can't add extra attention to Rashawn Gary because you have to double Micah Parsons every play. So now Rashawn Gary's opened up, and now it's looking like one of the best. I mean, this is one of the best pass rush duos in the NFL at this point, and a team that doesn't have a lot of holes. This is not a team has a bad roster, Dakota, but they've just been void of stars. And if Matthew Golden's a star and Micah Parsons is already a proven commodity and is a star, then dude, I mean, listen, this all of a sudden, it changes my outlook on the Packers 100%. And in an NFC that I always think it's up for grabs. Like, there's not a ton of elite quarterback talent in the NFC right now.
Right.
Okay. You have Jaden, but the Commanders still have a lot of question marks on their roster. And then you have the Eagles, and it's like, dude, I think this is the kind of move that moves the needle, that I think the Packers can get over the hump. And dude, we're just a year removed from people calling Jordan Love the next elite young quarterback in the NFL. I mean, it hasn't been that long. At the end of his rookie season starting, not his actual rookie season in the NFL, people are saying, dude, this is the next guy. Now people have soured on him a little bit, but dude, I mean, I think it's something like this. And again, the X factor that is Matthew Golden can change that.
Absolutely. And yeah, they are actually, to Daniel's point in chat, that they are young. I think they're actually the youngest team in the NFL the average age of the team right now. And you add a 26-year-old who's one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL to that young roster nucleus already. And it's, yeah. And when we've talked about the Packers, my concerns were pass rush and the secondary. And this kind of helps both, right? Like, because the pass rush is obviously going to take a step forward with having Micah Parsons, but now you can alleviate some of the pressure from the secondary by having an elite level pass rush. And I don't, Kenny Clark, I don't want to underplay how good of a player he had been for the Packers during his career there, but he was kind of on the turn down. Like his past season PFF grade, pass rushing and run grade wasn't great. It was kind of like the worst of his career. And now you pave the way. Carl Brooks has played pretty well as a guy that was drafted in 23. And now it's Devontae Wyatt's time to continue to develop and get plugged in there and nail down that interior. So suddenly the Packers defense is looking pretty good. The secondary could still be an issue, but with Micah out there at pass rushing, I mean, that's a game changer, right? And like a guy that has shown that he can also help, to your point, when he gets into those big games against the Eagles and whatnot in the playoffs that they'll have to make, having a guy like Micah can be a difference maker.
Yeah, and listen, first round picks are obviously extremely valuable, but listen, I think Micah Parsons can be worth 2 first-round players. I mean, in most drafts, especially a team like the Packers that are going to be competitive every single year, they're not going to be picking top 10. Like you're
Right.
not guaranteed to get a blue chip player in the 20s, like ever. In fact, it's rare that you do. So I mean, I think this is the team it makes sense for. It makes sense for the Packers. Now the contract's huge. Okay, he blew
Yes.
the edge rusher contract out of the water. I mean, he's getting 47 million a year. I mean, that's more than some mid-tier quarterbacks in the NFL. It's unbelievable money that he's getting. But again, a team like this is one of the few teams in NFL that this trade made sense for. And I also think that they didn't get like, or they didn't have to give up as much as I thought they would. I would rather give up Kenny Clark than an additional second round pick if I'm the Packers. I mean, I just would. You didn't have to give up all that much draft capital when getting this deal done.
No, and I agree. And we were talking about looking at some of their other first round picks, right? Because that's what I like to do. Jordan Morgan, who's projected to not start this year, was their first round pick last year. And then Lucas Van Ness was the first round pick in 23, who's now projected to be a backup. So it's like if you just weigh, and it's an inconsistent way to look at trades like this, but like just when you're picking at the back end of the first consistently, those guys don't always pan out. And if you're basically saying the value of those picks and those two players, for example, then you take Micah 10 out of 10 times. And this is a roster that's really interesting because of the youth and because of the lack of star power on it. When you're looking at it, like who's next in line to get paid, and there's not anybody that stands out, right? Like, because Josh Jacobs got signed in free agency, had a pretty big deal. Jordan Love's been paid. They don't have an elite wide receiver right now. Nobody needs to be paid there. Nobody else on the defense is that elite. So you can also afford to make this play and still have the room for if Matthew Golden breaks out and other guys start to develop that you could then still pay them later on.
I mean, I think they have if they're as high on Matthew Golden as it seems like they are, they have everything taken care of, dude. They have their quarterback paid, they have their elite edge rusher paid, and their potentially elite wide receiver is on a rookie contract. So it's like money wise, again, one of the few teams it made total sense for. And yeah, again, I think it moves the needle, man. To preview our preview a little bit that we're about to go live with after this, I'm gonna pick them to win this division, and it's like we just said, the hardest division in the NFL. But this is the kind of move that can move the needle and get them over the hump, and kind of change our perception on this roster, right? Completely changes our perception on this roster. Now a team that still doesn't have many holes, just added elite player, probably the second best at his position in the NFL.
Yeah, and for those that are, we tuning in right now, we will be going live once this wraps up. Give us another 15 minutes or so, and we will be live with the show we've plugged a bit, our 2025 season preview show. We're going division by division, playoff seeding, awards, all of that fun stuff. So please stick around after this. But yeah, and I don't think it can be understated how good Mike has been early in his career. I think he's another one of those guys that like people want to try to act like is overrated, but he is one of two players in NFL history to have started their first 4 seasons with 12 plus sacks, and the other is the GOAT Reggie White.
Wow.
So when you are in the company of Reggie White, you are at an elite level already. Again, he's just 4 seasons into his NFL career now. And he has averaged 12 sacks, over 12. He's had over 12 sacks per season. It just a playmaking absolute beast for the Packers to add to that defense. And then let's look at the other side of this now, and the Cowboys. So, oof. So what was already not looking super optimistic for the Cowboys this season, with the head coaching change and the uncertainty there, and a roster that didn't look great, a defense that wasn't great last year and really couldn't stop the run early on. And now you get rid of by far the best piece of it and add an aging interior defensive tackle to replace him. Things are looking a little bleak in Dallas now.
It definitely is looking a little bleak, dude. My initial impression from Dallas's perspective is, I asked you before the show, why do you trade for a guy like George Pickens? This is the kind of move that you make if you're resetting. And I could kind of understand that Dallas wants to reset if that's the vision. But I don't think that was the plan or the vision, Dakota. I think this
Right.
all just unraveled in a way that they didn't expect. I think they wanted to compete this year and they wanted to be good this year, but it just didn't pan out that way. And I think the relationship was like broken and they had to make this move like literally the week before the season starts. It's not a good look for Dallas. And again, and maybe this is what the market was, but 2 first rounders, I mean, I don't know, man. It feels like a player of Micah's level, you probably could have got a little bit more, or I would have expected that. And plus, now looking at their roster, who already had a ton of question marks, dude. I mean, we're looking at an offensive line that's completely rebuilt. Okay. They're completely rebuilt their offensive line. And defensively, you take away Micah Parsons. And what's the strength of that defense now? I mean, it is that defensive line is, let's be honest, it's abysmal, dude. It is not good.
Yeah.
I mean, Donovan Ezraku, we were high on him in the draft, but it's him and friends now on the D line, dude. It is not a good defensive line at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Osa Digizua is solid. Yeah. Yeah. Digizua is now the best player on that defensive line, and he's solid, but
he is
not elite. And yeah, our boy Donovan Ezraku, we did love him in the draft, and now we're going to find out pretty soon what he's made of. Go, as you mentioned before the show, go replace Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence's production
in one offseason. In one offseason. Yeah. Can you do that for us?
Catching up on the chat here. So Nate, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, and Micah Parsons, glad the Bengals aren't in the NFC North. They have their own problems in the NFC North. The Norths are just, I mean, divisions. I'm glad my team's not a part of either of them. And then TJ Parker is definitely a Cowboy. I'm going to say that's not a bad prediction at all. Or Keldrick Falk, edge rusher from Auburn. He's high on a lot of draft boards. I think it's a safe bet. One of those will be a Cowboy next
Collins
year.
From Texas. He's pretty good too. So yeah.
Daniel says, does this trade change the outlook for Dallas in their divisions? Giants are young, but haven't done a ton. So it's funny you mentioned that. Again, with our preview show, we don't want to preview the preview too much, but I made a switch. Yes, I did. The Cowboys are last now. I do think the Giants are, and one of the things I want to talk about is like how difficult of a job it is to be the head coach for the Cowboys. Because when you have your owner / GM doing things like this, how do you coach this football team? How do you know what you're going to have to put on the field and try to perform with? That's just such an unfortunate situation.
This goes back to the 80s with Jimmy Johnson, man, in the 90s. I mean, Jimmy Johnson was an elite head coach for Dallas, and Jerry Jones broke that relationship. And it's been Jerry, like the consistent factor in all this, all Dallas's turmoil is Jerry Jones. I mean, he's the issue here. And I believe he is the reason they couldn't get this deal done, because I think they were going to pay 47, by the way. I think they were going to get to the number. I think they were. I mean, Jerry came out and said today that he said to Micah that they would get to 47. So why couldn't he get it done? It's because you F around and you found out, and Micah is gone now. And I mean, it's just, they really screwed this up, man. They just did. And now a team that, I mean, we're just a couple years removed from Dak being an MVP candidate, right? Them winning the division and then getting shellacked by the Packers in the playoffs, which is kind of funny that they decided, you know what, the team that killed us in the playoffs, let's give them our best edge rusher. But like, Dallas was on the brink of competing just a couple years ago, Dakota. And they still have Dak and CD, which is, you can argue, the two most important positions taken care of. But I just don't see the vision anymore, man. I don't see the vision. I'm not sure if I believe in the head coach. And yeah, dude, I definitely don't expect them to make the playoffs. And as you alluded to, I could easily see them finishing last in this division.
And again, I feel for Schottenheimer, because again, it's difficult how you go into a season expecting to coach a football team that you don't know what it'll look like on the field. And then literally exactly a week before the season starts, because they are set to play the Eagles on Thursday night next week. They will not have their star edge rusher. And like, I know that he's not been around, so you've already had to prep for that. But as the head coach, when you took the job, you're looking at the roster, right? And you're like, okay, here's what we have to work with. And looking at this defense, man, it's going to be a problem, especially in a division that has Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, Jaden Daniels and that Commanders offense that got even more high powered. Like you're in for it. And the embarrassing job by Jerry Jones is the summation of all of this, because he did it with Dak and CD, and now he does it here, but to the point where he fractured the relationship so much he couldn't salvage it. And being an owner and a GM it just does not work, in my opinion. Like it's just not a good setup for things like this, and you set your coach up to be in difficult situations pretty consistently.
The sad thing is, dude, they in totality in the last, let's say 10 to 15 years, from a drafting perspective, Dallas hasn't been that bad. I would say they're one of the better drafting teams. It's the playing out the drama, wanting the drama so bad that you're literally willing to give up one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And yes, you get something back. And listen, it's 2 first-round picks are good to have for the future. That's not inconsequential. But this is not, again, I go back to the fact, Dakota, that they were not playing for the future. You don't trade for George Pickens literally a month and a half ago if you're playing for the future. Like, they wanted to win this year, but their owner screwed it up, man. And, saying in the chat here that he believes the Eagles versus Dallas could be a bloodbath. Yeah, I mean, I could see that, man. I could see it.
I know we want to use our Eagles pick for our survivor pool thing for the check to Mike, but that's a pretty safe bet for sure now.
It definitely
some of the other stuff in chat, that preview show is going to hit, like Bart Scott said. Can't wait. Appreciate that, Nate. It all started with Dak's contract, to be honest. Many more issues, historically speaking, but you killed your cap when you made that contract. And it's true, because that situation happened because of a similar one like this, where you pushed it off. If he had signed Dak, I forgot who all did get signed before him. Trevor may have been one of them, but the market just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and then it made you make Dak the highest paid quarterback at $60 million.
Very good point. And let's keep in mind, at the time that they could have got it done, they probably could have got Dak at 55. Like, they probably could have got him closer to 55 or maybe even under 55. But like you said, they drug it out. They did the same thing with CD, so they had to pay both of them top of the market, and they just thought they were going to get cute and do that once again with Micah and get all the headlines there in the offseason. But now you're going to get absolutely clowned. I mean, we've been harsh on Dallas. Can you imagine what the shouty shows are going to do to Dallas on or tomorrow? It's not going to be a great look for them.
Saying, Daniel saying Jordan Love's signing was kind of one that drove Dak. That's also true. I think Jordan was one that got signed before Dak. So it is ironic. All of this is pretty ironic for the Cowboys and Jerry. A little bit of egg on his face from all of this. So appreciate everybody that tuned into this. Please like, share if you haven't already, subscribed. We are about to go live for our preview show, so just give us a little bit. But any final thoughts on this, Austin, before we prep for the preview show?
No, man. Kind of like you're saying, we really appreciate people watching. Hitting that sub button's important, man. And hit the little notification bell too. That helps. So when we go live. And like you said, we're literally as quick as I can get this second live stream up. We're going live once again, and that show will be much bigger. And we'll talk about Dallas and the Packers once
part
again.
Of it.
So it's a big part of it. Some of the changes, last minute changes. So man.
All right, perfect. Well, appreciate everybody that tuned in live, and for those that watch this, please like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And then if you are watching live right now, see us again here in a little bit. We'll talk then, but until then,
thanks for talking ball with us.